The moment I said I love you, the alien woman looked at me like time had frozen. Dr. Marcus Chen had been staring at the same line of Luminari script for the past 20 minutes, and it still made absolutely no sense. The symbols seemed to shift and reorganize themselves every time he looked away and back again, like they were playing some kind of cosmic joke on him. He rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair, the soft hum of station harmony's environmental systems providing a constant backdrop to his frustration. "You are doing the thing again," Velora said from across the workstation, her crystalline body catching the ambient light and scattering it into gentle rainbows across the walls. Her voice came not from a mouth, but from vibrations in the air itself, a phenomenon that had taken Marcus 3 weeks to stop finding unsettling. "What thing?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "The thing where you press your fingers against your optical organs and make the sound of air escaping," Velora said. Her glow pulsed in a steady, measured rhythm that Marcus had learned, meant she was in her analytical state. "It indicates frustration in your species, yes. Every time I think I've got it, the meaning slips away." They were beings of living crystal, their consciousness distributed through a lattice structure that could reshape itself at will. Velora usually maintained a roughly humanoid shape when working with Marcus, something she had explained was a courtesy to make him more comfortable. He appreciated the gesture, even though he'd told her it wasn't necessary. "Perhaps the difficulty is not in the translation, but in the concept itself," Velora suggested. Her internal light began cycling through different patterns, something Marcus had come to recognize as deep thought. "Your species experiences memory as individual and isolated. Our memories exist in the collective. The very structure of remembering is different." The Luminari had made contact with humanity 3 years ago, their vast crystalline ships appearing in orbit around Earth without warning or fanfare. The first message they sent was simple: "We have observed you. We wish to understand you." They had no concept of war, no history of violence, no understanding of conflict beyond mathematical disagreement. Their entire civilization operated as a kind of benevolent hive mind, each individual connected to every other through quantum entanglement, sharing thoughts and experiences instantaneously across light years. Marcus had volunteered for the exchange program the moment applications opened. As a xenolinguist, the opportunity to study a truly alien form of communication was the chance of a lifetime. He'd left behind a small apartment, a cat being cared for by his sister, and a series of failed relationships that all ended with some variation of "you care more about your work than about us." But then again, none of them had ever been as interesting as trying to decode how a species without vocal cords developed language, or how beings who shared thoughts directly still needed words at all. "You are doing the thing again," Velora said, pulling him from his thoughts. "What thing this time?" "Or sometimes just getting distracted. It's pretty common for humans." The Luminari seemed to view human inefficiency the way a biologist might view an unusual adaptation in an animal, interesting but neither good nor bad. "Maybe," Marcus agreed, "but sometimes the best ideas come when you're not trying to force them. Sometimes you have to let your mind wander." "How does not thinking about a problem help you solve the problem?" Most of the other Luminari on the station approached humanity as a research subject. Velora approached humans as a mystery worth solving, and she brought a kind of enthusiasm to the work that reminded Marcus why he'd fallen in love with linguistics in the first place. Love. The word surfaced in his mind unbidden, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. He'd been trying not to think about it for weeks now. It was absurd, obviously. Velora wasn't human. She wasn't even biological in any traditional sense. She was a being of living mineral, operating on principles of consciousness that humanity barely understood. The idea of developing feelings for her was ridiculous, except it wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a fact, one that Marcus had been carefully avoiding examining too closely. "Marcus," Velora's voice pulled him back to the present, "you have become very still. Are you experiencing a malfunction?" "Just thinking." "I am here, I am known to you. The way you think, the way you approach problems, the way you get excited about discovering something new even though you'd never call it excitement. The Luminari operate on logic and collective consensus. You only do that when you've figured something out that was really challenging. It serves to signal to other Luminari that a breakthrough has occurred. Or maybe it's what joy looks like for your species, and you just don't have a word for it. It serves no logical purpose. The observation window behind Velora showed the eternal darkness of space, punctuated by distant stars. "What if logic isn't everything?" Marcus asked quietly. "What if there are things worth experiencing that don't make sense, that can't be quantified or shared through your collective consciousness?" He couldn't be sure. "Such as this," Marcus said and took a breath. "Velora, I've been trying to figure out how to say this, trying to find the right moment or the right words, but maybe there aren't right words for this. Maybe it's one of those things that doesn't translate cleanly." The words hung in the air between them for a moment, and then something extraordinary happened. Velora stopped. Not just stopped moving, the Luminari didn't really move in the traditional sense anyway. She stopped in a way that Marcus had never seen before. Her internal light, which always pulsed and shifted and flowed, went completely still. Not dark, but frozen, as if someone had paused time itself, but only for her. Marcus's heart began to race. Had he broken something? Was this some kind of shutdown response? He'd never heard of a Luminari freezing like this, never seen it in any of the documentation or briefings. "Velora," he said, reaching out but not quite touching her crystalline surface. "Are you okay? Did I do something wrong?" Velora remained perfectly still, her light caught in mid-pattern, a cascade of colors that should have been flowing but instead hung suspended like a photograph. Marcus pulled out his communication device, ready to call for medical assistance or whatever the equivalent was for a crystalline alien life form. His thumb hovered over the emergency contact button, and then Velora moved, but it wasn't her usual movement. Her light exploded into motion, but not in any pattern Marcus had ever seen. It was chaotic, wild, beautiful in a way that defied description. Colors raced through her crystalline matrix in directions that seemed to contradict each other. Spirals forming and dissolving, waves crashing into themselves, and creating interference patterns that looked like abstract art. "What?" Velora said, and her voice was different too, layered with harmonics that hadn't been there before. "What is happening to me? What are you feeling?" "My patterns are wrong, they are not coherent, they are not logical." When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost wondering. "I do not have words," she said. "In all the languages of the Luminari, across all our collected knowledge and shared experience, I do not have words for what is occurring in my consciousness right now. It is as if I have been seeing in 2 dimensions my entire existence, and you have just shown me a third. But I cannot describe the third dimension to anyone else. I cannot share it through the collective. It exists only here, only now, only in me. Something that's yours and yours alone, even though it connects you to someone else." "Teach me," she said. "Teach me what you have done to me. I need to understand this." In the 3 days since Marcus had spoken those 3 words, her entire existence had become unpredictable in ways that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The terror was new. The thrill was new. Everything was new, and Velora could not decide if she wanted it to stop or if she wanted to dive deeper into this strange ocean of sensation that had no bottom she could find. She sat in her private chamber, though sitting was perhaps the wrong word for how a Luminari rested. Her crystalline form had settled into a low-energy state, her usual sharp edges softening into curves, her light dimmed to a gentle pulse. This was how her species recharged, how they processed the day's information and integrated it into the collective consciousness. Except Velora could not integrate anything anymore. Every time she tried to connect to the vast network of Luminari minds that had been her constant companion since the moment of her formation, she encountered a wall. Not a physical barrier, but something worse. Her patterns no longer matched, her thoughts no longer synchronized. She was broadcasting on a frequency that no other Luminari could receive. She was alone. The realization should have been devastating. Luminari were not meant to be alone. Their entire civilization was built on connection, on the instant sharing of knowledge and experience across billions of individuals. Isolation was the closest thing her species had to death, but Velora was not devastated. She was fascinated. Because in the space where the collective had been, something else had grown, something wild and unpredictable and entirely her own. Thoughts that belonged to no one else, feelings that could not be quantified or shared or analyzed by committee. She had become, in a very real sense, an individual, and it was Marcus's fault. Velora's light pattern shifted at the thought of him, spiraling into colors she had not known she could produce. She had spent the last 72 hours with him, trying to build a framework for understanding what was happening to her. He had been patient, kind, and utterly baffled by the magnitude of what his simple confession had triggered. "Tell me what you're feeling right now," he had said that morning, the two of them alone in the linguistics lab again. It had become their sanctuary, the place where Velora felt safe enough to let her light patterns run wild without worrying about alarming the other Luminari. "I do not know how to answer that question," Velora had replied, her frustration evident in the sharp angles her form took on. "You ask me to describe something I have no language for. It is like asking someone who has never seen to describe color. If a word doesn't exist, we create it." Joy was close but not quite right, too simple for the complex cascade of sensations she felt when she solved a problem. Contentment was warmer but more stable than the gentle pulse of satisfaction she experienced during their quiet moments together. Love was the most difficult because Marcus himself seemed uncertain of how to define it. "It's different for everyone," he had explained, running his hand through his hair in that gesture Velora had learned meant he was searching for words. "For some people, love is calm and steady. For others, it's intense and consuming. For me, with you, it's like curiosity that never ends. Every time I think I understand you, you surprise me. And instead of that being frustrating, it's the best part. There's a difference." She knew that his absence created a hollow sensation in her consciousness that she found deeply unpleasant. She knew that the thought of never seeing him again triggered cascades of chaotic light that took significant energy to stabilize. By human definitions, perhaps this was love. By luminary definitions, it was a malfunction that required immediate correction. The door to her chamber chimed, the station's universal signal that someone wished to enter. Velora's form shifted to a more formal configuration, her light steadying into neutral patterns. "Enter," she said. The door opened to reveal Kristallos, one of the senior luminary researchers on the station. His form was larger than Velora's, more angular, his light pulsing in the steady rhythm of complete connection to the collective consciousness. He was, in other words, everything Velora used to be and could no longer become. "Velora," Kristallos said, his voice carrying harmonics of concern. "The collective has noted your absence. You have not shared your research findings in 72 hours. This is unprecedented. Your light patterns are highly irregular. I have never observed such configurations. You should submit to a diagnostic scan immediately." Her light began to shift into those wild, unprecedented patterns again, the ones that marked her as different, as changed, as other. Kristallos went very still. "What has happened to you?" he asked, and for the first time, Velora heard something in another Luminari's voice that might have been fear. Before Velora could answer, her chamber door opened again. Marcus stood in the doorway, slightly out of breath as if he had been running. "Velora, I've been looking for you. We need to talk about what happened this morning when you solved that," he trailed off, noticing Kristallos. "Oh, sorry, am I interrupting?" "You have been working closely with Velora. Have you noticed any anomalies in her behavior?" If she told Kristallos what had happened, what she was experiencing, it would be reported to the collective. The collective would make a decision, and Velora had a growing suspicion that she would not like that decision. But before she could signal to Marcus, before she could indicate what she wanted him to say, something extraordinary happened. She felt something new, something that made her light flare bright enough that both Marcus and Kristallos took a step back. It was fear. Real, genuine fear. Not the logical assessment of potential danger that the Luminari collective used to evaluate risk. This was primal, irrational, overwhelming fear. Fear of losing what she had gained. Fear of being forced back into the collective and losing this precious, terrible individuality. Fear of never seeing Marcus again, and with the fear came anger. How dare the collective decide what she should or should not experience? How dare they define her existence by their standards of efficiency and logic? She was discovering something new, something unprecedented, something that could change everything the Luminari understood about consciousness itself. And they wanted to call it a malfunction and correct it. "Velora," Marcus said softly, and she realized her form had become sharp and jagged, her light strobing in aggressive patterns that the Luminari used only in situations of extreme mathematical disagreement. It's okay. Breathe. I am simply exploring new research methodologies. I refuse examination. What Velora had just done was not merely unusual. It was unprecedented in the entire history of her species. You refuse, Cristallos said slowly, as if testing out an unfamiliar word. Velora, you do not have the capacity to refuse. None of us do. We are part of the collective. The collective decides. I choose to remain as I am. We are beyond such primitive limitations. And that seems pretty advanced to me. What human contamination have you introduced into her matrix? If anything, she did something to herself. What you describe cannot occur. Something that the collective has never known, because the collective has never been truly individual. I am experiencing phenomena that cannot be shared through quantum entanglement, that cannot be reduced to mathematical formulas, that exist only in the privacy of a singular consciousness. Or the definition of growth, Marcus suggested. Look, I know this is scary. Believe me, humans struggle with emotions all the time. They're messy and complicated, and they make you do things that don't make logical sense, but they also make life worth living. They give meaning to existence beyond just processing information. They will make a determination about how to proceed. If they decide to erase what I have become and force me back into pure collective consciousness. After Cristallos left, Marcus turned to Velora. Are you okay? He asked. I do not know, Velora admitted. I am experiencing so many things simultaneously, fear of what the collective will decide. Anger at being told I am malfunctioning when I feel more functional than ever before. Sadness at the thought of losing this. And something else, something warm and bright when I look at you. Or at least the beginning of it. That's pretty much exactly what love is. The quarantine order came through at 600 station time, delivered by Commander Sarah Okonkwo herself. Marcus had been awake for hours already, unable to sleep after Cristallos' visit to Velora's chamber. He had known something was coming, but the speed of the response still caught him off guard. I'm sorry, Marcus, Commander Okonkwo said, standing in the doorway of his quarters with 2 security officers behind her. She looked tired, her usually immaculate uniform slightly rumpled. The order came from both Earth Command and the Luminari High Consensus. You and Velora are to be separated immediately and confined to isolated sections of the station pending investigation. Since when is that a crime? Earth Command is calling it a potential first contact incident with catastrophic implications. Either way, my hands are tied. But he could see the strain in Commander Okonkwo's face, could understand the impossible position she was in. Station Harmony represented humanity's best chance at peaceful coexistence with an alien species. One wrong move could end the entire program. Can I at least say goodbye to her? Marcus asked quietly. Commander Okonkwo hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, monitored, I'm sorry, but those are the terms. She stood near the observation window, her crystalline form catching the light from the distant stars. Her glow pattern was subdued, cycling through slow, mournful colors that Marcus had never seen her use before. Velora, he said, and she turned toward him. They are separating us, she said. It was not a question. Yeah, Marcus confirmed, moving closer but stopping short of touching her. He was acutely aware of the cameras recording every moment, the security officers stationed outside, the weight of 2 civilizations watching their interaction. They're scared, both sides. They don't understand what's happening to you, and fear makes people cautious. Fear that they will reset my consciousness and I will forget everything, forget you. You are one human among billions. I am one luminary among trillions. We are statistically insignificant. Sometimes all it takes is showing people something they've never seen before, making them question what they thought they knew. That emotions were evolutionary dead ends. That logic alone was sufficient for a meaningful existence. You proved all of it wrong simply by being yourself and inviting me to see through your eyes. Marcus pulled out his personal tablet, the one he used for research notes and translation work. Listen, they're going to monitor our official communications. Everything we say through station channels will be recorded and analyzed. But I need you to know that I'm not giving up on this. On us. on proving that what you're experiencing isn't contamination or malfunction. We're linguists, remember? Language is what we do, and every language has layers, meanings hidden beneath the surface. If I send you questions about translation theory, academic inquiries that seem completely innocent, can you look for the real message underneath? You wish to encode personal communication within professional correspondence. The collective considers deception to be highly inefficient. Before you spoke those words to me, I would have said that deception violated my core programming. But now I understand that core programming can be rewritten, that what we are is not fixed but fluid. Yes, Marcus. I am willing to learn deception if it means preserving what we have discovered. One last thing, he said quickly. That physics problem you mentioned, the one you solved by feeling the answer, did you document it? It might be important. The room was comfortable enough, with a bed, a desk, a small bathroom, and a computer terminal with limited access to station systems. He could send and receive official communications, access the research database, and submit reports. But he could not leave, could not contact anyone except through approved channels, and could not see Velora. Marcus sat at the desk and pulled up the communication interface. His first message was to his supervisor back on Earth, explaining the situation in dry academic terms. His second was to his sister, asking her to take care of his cat for a while longer. His third was to Velora, and he composed it with the careful precision of a man who knew every word would be scrutinized. Dr. Velora, he wrote, using her formal title. In light of our current situation, I believe it would be beneficial to continue our translation work remotely. I have been reviewing the concept of contextual meaning in human languages, specifically how the same words can carry different significance depending on tone, timing, and relationship between speakers. For example, the phrase, "I am thinking of you," can be a simple statement of fact, or it can carry layers of emotional subtext. I wonder if luminary communication has similar flexibility, or if your species' direct mind-to-mind contact eliminates the need for such nuance. I would value your perspective on this. The response came 6 hours later, and Marcus's heart jumped when he saw Velora's name in his inbox. Dr. Chen, she had written, your inquiry raises fascinating questions about the nature of communication. The Luminari Collective operates on principles of absolute clarity, where meaning is transmitted directly without risk of misinterpretation. However, I am discovering that this clarity comes at a cost. When meaning is always explicit, there is no space for the unsaid, for the implied, for the emotions that exist in the gaps between words. Humans seem to have developed language that accommodates both information transfer and emotional resonance. I find myself drawn to this dual-purpose communication, though I lack the practice to execute it effectively. Perhaps you could provide examples of how one might express complex internal states through seemingly simple academic discourse. I am eager to learn this skill, as I find myself experiencing internal states that the collective would not recognize or approve. Hidden in her response was acknowledgement, confirmation that she understood what he was trying to do and that she was willing to play along. Over the next few days, their correspondence became a lifeline for both of them. To anyone monitoring their messages, it appeared to be nothing more than two dedicated researchers continuing their work despite unfortunate circumstances. But beneath the surface, they were building a new language entirely their own. Marcus would write about the importance of metaphor in human poetry, and Velora would understand that he was telling her she made him see the universe differently. Velora would write about the mathematical elegance of certain luminary conceptual frameworks, and Marcus would understand that she was describing the feeling of connection she felt to him, something that existed outside the collective consciousness. It was on the 4th day of quarantine that Marcus received an unexpected visitor. The door to his chamber opened to reveal a young woman in an engineering uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her eyes bright with barely contained excitement. Dr. Chen. I'm Kai Nakamura, environmental systems engineer, she said quickly, glancing over her shoulder as if worried someone might overhear. I need to talk to you about something important and I don't have much time. What's this about? It's my job to make sure everything is balanced, that all the different species we host have the right temperature, pressure, gas mixture, all of that. And I've been noticing something weird with the Luminari sections. 5 of them are showing the same anomalies as Velora, Kai said, her words tumbling out in a rush. Irregular light patterns, loss of synchronization with the collective, increased energy consumption in ways that don't match standard Luminari behavioral profiles. At first I thought it was equipment malfunction, but I checked and rechecked. It's not the equipment, it's them. They're changing. Do you know their names? All 5 of them have been working closely with human researchers. Not just casual contact, but deep collaboration on long-term projects. It's happening to any Luminari who spends significant time with humans. She thinks whatever is happening to the Luminari is dangerous, that we're somehow damaging them. I think what's happening is amazing. Those 5 Luminari, they've been coming to me with questions. Personal questions about what it feels like to be human, to have emotions, to make individual choices. Thren asked me yesterday what it means to miss someone. A Luminari asked me about missing someone, Dr. Chen. That's incredible. We lose the chance to prove that emotions aren't a weakness or a contamination. They're a bridge. A way for 2 completely different species to actually understand each other on a level deeper than just information exchange. Marcus looked at this young engineer who had risked reprimand to bring him this information, and he felt something shift in his understanding of the situation. This was bigger than just him and Velora. This was about the future of human-Luminari relations, about whether 2 species could truly connect or would remain forever separated by the gulf of their different ways of experiencing consciousness. Kai, he said slowly, how would you feel about helping me prove a theory? The proposal reached Commander Okonkwo's desk at 800 station time, delivered through official channels with all the proper formatting and authorization requests. Marcus had spent the entire night working on it, refining every word, anticipating every objection. He knew he would only get one chance at this, one opportunity to change the trajectory of an entire first contact scenario. The title was simple and direct, a controlled study on emotional intelligence transfer between species. This is either brilliant or completely insane, she said without preamble. I haven't decided which yet. The best ideas usually are. The same high consensus that is currently debating whether to sever all contact with humanity, because they believe we've contaminated one of their own. And I have evidence to support that claim. Before that point, her research was solid, methodical, exactly what one would expect from a highly intelligent Luminari scientist. After that point, something changed. Look at this, Marcus said, highlighting a particularly complex physics problem that had stumped researchers from both species for decades. This is the quantum coherence paradox in biological systems. Teams have been working on it for years with no progress. Velora solved it in 6 hours. The Luminari operate on pure logic, which is powerful but limited. They can only explore solutions that follow logical progression from known principles. But emotions, intuition, they let you make jumps. They let you see connections that pure logic might take years to derive, if it ever finds them at all. Are they showing similar improvements? The Luminari gain access to emotional and intuitive reasoning that could accelerate their scientific progress by orders of magnitude. Humans gain access to the Luminari's logical frameworks and collective knowledge processing. Both species become more than they were alone. If we can prove that emotions don't replace logic but enhance it, if we can show them that what happened to Velora isn't a loss of function but an expansion of capability. Commander, the Luminari value efficiency above all else. What's more efficient than having access to multiple modes of thinking instead of just one? If I authorize this, if I present this proposal to both Earth Command and the Luminari High Consensus, you understand that everything depends on the demonstration. If it fails, if you can't prove your theory, they'll shut down the program permanently. They'll separate every human and Luminari on this station and ensure we never work together again. I can't let that happen without fighting for her. Despite the fact that she's a crystalline alien who thinks in mathematics and processes information through quantum entanglement. That has to be worth preserving. You're asking to fundamentally change their species, to introduce individual consciousness to a collective that has existed for millions of years without it. That's not a small thing. That's evolution on a scale and speed that could be catastrophic. They agreed to the demonstration, but with conditions. Velora would undergo the procedure to reset her consciousness regardless of the outcome. The demonstration would involve 3 members of the High Consensus, who volunteered to experience temporary emotional exposure in a controlled environment. If the results showed measurable enhancement of cognitive capability without permanent alteration to their connection with the collective, they would consider allowing limited emotional integration on a voluntary basis. If the results showed otherwise, all human Luminari collaboration would end immediately. Marcus read the terms 3 times, feeling his stomach sink with each reading. "They're going to reset her anyway," he said to Kai, who had become his unofficial co-conspirator in the days leading up to the demonstration. "Even if we prove everything, even if we change their minds about emotions, they're still going to erase what Velora has become. Maybe that's the real demonstration you need to give them. Not just that emotions enhance logic, but that individual choice is valuable in itself. The Luminari have never had to consider individual rights because they've never had individuals before. But now they do, 6 of them at least, and those 6 deserve the same autonomy that any conscious being deserves. We show them what individuality makes possible," Marcus said, an idea forming. "We show them what Velora accomplished that no purely collective consciousness could achieve." The demonstration took place in the station's main conference hall, with representatives from Earth Command physically present, and the Luminari High Consensus participating through quantum link proxies. Marcus stood at the center of the room, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes, both human and alien, watching his every move. 3 Luminari stood before him, their crystalline forms identical in size and proportion, their light patterns synchronized perfectly with each other and with the distant collective consciousness. They had volunteered for this experience, though Marcus suspected the collective had selected them carefully, choosing individuals deemed most resistant to emotional influence. "Thank you for agreeing to participate," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the nervousness churning in his stomach. "What we're going to do today is simple. I'm going to introduce you to the concept of curiosity, not as an abstract principle, but as a lived experience. We experience this constantly. Does the awareness of something unknown create a sensation inside you, a pull toward discovery that exists separate from any logical assessment of whether that information is useful?" The 3 Luminari were silent, their light patterns flickering in what Marcus had learned to recognize as consideration. "I'm going to show you something," Marcus continued, pulling up a holographic display. "This is a star system we discovered 3 months ago. It has some unusual properties that don't quite match our current models of stellar formation. Now, from a purely logical standpoint, studying this system might or might not yield useful information. The probability of discovering anything that significantly advances our understanding is relatively low. A purely rational analysis would suggest allocating resources elsewhere. Despite the low probability of significant discovery, despite the questionable resource allocation, I want to know more about it. Not because I should, but because I want to. Can you distinguish between those 2 motivations? Want is an emotional modifier that introduces inefficiency into decision-making processes. The collective does not want. The collective evaluates and decides based on optimal resource distribution. What if desire, even irrational desire, serves a purpose that pure logic can't replicate? Purely logical approaches kept hitting the same walls, exploring the same possibility spaces, finding nothing. But then Velora, after gaining access to emotional and intuitive thinking, solved it in hours. How? Because she wanted to understand it badly enough that she was willing to explore illogical possibilities, to follow hunches that had no basis in prior evidence, to feel her way toward an answer. Marcus pulled up more data, showing the improved research output of all 6 Luminari, who had developed emotional responses. This isn't contamination. This is enhancement. Emotions don't replace logic. They give logic new directions to explore, new questions to ask, new possibilities to consider. Marcus pressed forward, sensing an opening. "I want to try something," he said. "I want each of you to think about a question that you've always wondered about, not because it would advance Luminari scientific understanding, or optimize collective resource distribution, but because you personally find it interesting. Can you do that? This wondering serves no logical purpose, but it persists in my processing nonetheless. We know we can never know this, that the information is forever inaccessible, yet the wondering continues. If consensus truth is the same as actual truth, this wondering has existed in my consciousness for many cycles, but I have never spoken it because questioning the collective is not logical. That's curiosity, he said gently. That's the feeling of wanting to know something even when knowing it serves no practical purpose. That's what makes discovery possible. Not just solving assigned problems, but asking new questions that no one thought to assign. She moved toward him, her light pattern wild and beautiful and entirely unique. The high consensus instructed me to undergo the reset procedure before this demonstration, Velora said, her voice carrying across the hall. I refused. I am an individual. I am Velora, and I choose what happens to my own consciousness. But I also experience hope, joy, love, curiosity, and wonder. These emotions have not diminished my logical capabilities. They have expanded them. I have accomplished more meaningful research in the past few weeks than in cycles of purely collective work, because I have learned to combine logic with intuition, analysis with feeling, collective wisdom with individual insight. This human taught me that existence can be more than efficient information processing. He taught me that consciousness can be rich and complex and beautiful. He taught me that connection between two beings can exist on levels deeper than data transfer. And in learning these things, I have become more than I was, not less. Mort, the Center One spoke first. I felt something when Dr. Chen asked us about our questions, when he invited us to acknowledge wanting without purpose. I felt a sensation that has no name in our language. It was uncomfortable and exhilarating simultaneously. The question before us is not whether emotions exist or whether they can be transferred between species. Clearly they can. The question is whether the Luminari will allow their people to choose for themselves whether to explore this new dimension of consciousness. Then, through their proxies, they spoke in a voice that carried the weight of trillions of minds considering a single question. We have made our decision. Individual Luminari may choose to pursue emotional integration on a voluntary basis. Those who choose this path will maintain their connection to the collective, but will also develop autonomous consciousness. This is unprecedented in our history. It is illogical. It is inefficient. And yet, having experienced the first stirrings of curiosity ourselves, we find that we want to know what might emerge from this experiment. We choose to see where this leads. I love you, she said, and this time her voice carried full comprehension of those words, full awareness of their weight and meaning. I understand now what you gave me that day, not contamination, not malfunction. You gave me myself, and I choose to keep it. I choose to keep you. I choose this, all of this, everything that comes with it. And I can't wait to see what we discover together. 50 Luminari had chosen to undergo voluntary emotional integration, learning to balance collective wisdom with individual insight. Human researchers worked alongside them, creating new frameworks for understanding consciousness itself. And in the quiet moments between research sessions, Marcus and Velora would stand together at the observation window, watching the stars, experiencing the simple joy of shared wonder, proving every day that the distance between two minds, no matter how different, could be bridged by the simple act of choosing to understand, to feel, and to love.